Welcome to the Church Solutions Podcast, brought to you by JSL Solutions. The Church Solutions Podcast is designed to help equip you and your church in the use of technology and other tools and services. And now, here are your hosts, Steve Lacey and Phil Thompson.
Hi, folks, and welcome to another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast.
Hey, my name is Steve Lacey.
And my name is Phil Thompson. We are with JSL Solutions, and we do this Church Solutions Podcast usually every week, although last week we kind of took a break because we did a little special Christmas video.
Yes.
Which we didn't actually upload it to our iTunes. So if you listen to iTunes and you missed our little Christmas greeting, you can just go to, you can go to newmediaministries.tv, or you can go to our YouTube channel, which is Phil Thompson Live. And I don't know where else we're at, but our little Christmas greeting was last week, and we actually announced the price reduction.
For next year, yes.
For next year for bandwidth.
So we've been working hard and reducing our bandwidth costs, our infrastructure costs, and passing on the savings.
Yeah, good deal. So that will be in January. If you need more details on that, just contact us. Just go to support@streamingchurch.tv or something like that. So we have been talking over the last several weeks about live encoders.
Yes.
And we've been primarily looking at software-based, well, not primarily, that's exclusively what we've been looking at. We've looked at what kind of encoders have we looked at?
We started with Flash Media Live Encoder, the Adobe product. We went into, I think, the Wirecast encoder, which is another product from Telestream, and we went through the Open Broadcaster software, which is an open tool, and VidBlaster.
Yeah. So if you missed any of that, you can just go to iTunes, look for Church Solutions Podcast, or again, go to Phil Thompson Live, which is our YouTube channel, or go to newmediaministries.tv. We're all over the map. So we promised that we would cover, at least briefly, a little bit about the, instead of software-based hardware, box encoders.
Yeah.
And there's
video
a number.
Switchers, encoders, yeah.
And there's a number of ones out there. But let's talk specifically about one that's pretty well known, and that's the Tricaster.
Mm-hmm. Tricaster's been around for quite a while. Actually, my church was using it for several years. When we started streaming, that was the first encoder that we had was a Tricaster.
So, and that's Tricaster is generally more of a high ticket item, more of a high ticket item.
Yeah, it's a dedicated hardware item. So, the Tricaster is going to be for someone that's got multiple cameras that wants to do a really professional job.
Okay. Not that you couldn't with something else, but as we're talking about this particular Tricaster, there are numerous models out there. There's the Tricaster 40. There's the Tricaster Mini HD4. There's the Tricaster Mini HD4i, I think, is that what that is? Tricaster 410, Tricaster 460, Tricaster 860, Tricaster 8000, and they all come with lots of different prices.
Yes, and just to confuse things even more, this is this year's models.
Oh, yeah.
So in the past, they've got other models. There's probably dozens and dozens of different Tricaster models and different software versions too, because I know I had some experience with one of the Tricasters that was purchased in 2009, 2010, so 5 years ago or so. And some of the ones that have been more recently purchased, as I'm working with people over the phone, I know the user interface is completely different than what I was looking at.
So there can be quite a difference in them. So first of all, there's lots of differences here, and we're going to cover some of this stuff here. But we generally push the software. We like software-based encoders. All right. So I don't mean to sound biased here, but tell us a little bit about the experience that your church, which actually was my church at the time, and actually I was the one that kind of had to chase down the problems with this, but we had a Tricaster.
Yeah, we had a Tricaster. So I mean, one of the things that we were looking for, we thought, well, we're gonna, we want to go the quality route. We want to create a very professional product. And at the time, this was one of the leading recommendations to buy the dedicated hardware.
Okay.
So at the time, we spent, I think, between $8,000 and $10,000
Right.
for this video mixer.
I remember that.
Yeah. So it's quite a, it's a pretty significant purchase depending on your church budget. But for us, it was a pretty big investment.
Well, and then, of course, I kind of came on the scene. I think I was in Kansas and came back, whatever. And I noticed that with the Tricaster, you also had to have another computer along with it to be able to do your lower thirds.
Yeah, they had, with the Tricaster guys have had a complementary set of software that was used for your lower thirds and that sort of thing. And to tell you the truth, I was not a big fan. I thought it was some of the worst software that I had seen. So our setup at our church was we had, which is probably going to be typical with a lot of different churches. We didn't have a paid AV tech team that were full-time job. It was volunteers. I was one of the volunteers. We had a handful of volunteers. And so getting into the Tricaster arena, this is going to be it's going to take a little bit more skill and training than getting into some of the other, products that we talked about where they said, okay, come in and, push this button, you're set. The Tricaster's typically someone that's going to be, in the market for a Tricaster is going to have a deeper skill set. It's going to take a little bit more to set up. But it's going to be more powerful than some of the setups. One of the things that really sets it apart is there's just a myriad of inputs. Even on their low end items, there's inputs, lots of camera inputs or audio and video inputs with a bunch of different formats, all through dedicated hardware inputs.
Well, and yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head, Steve. And that is, for those of you interested in this and have the staff to do it or have somebody that's designated to do it, it could definitely work really well.
Yeah, it could definitely work. So you're going to want to have somebody that's going to be able to invest some time in, for shopping it and then installing it and then getting it set up. So, because it's not quite as easy to get set up and operating as going the route of buying, getting a computer with some video cards and getting it installed.
And in all fairness to the Tricaster people, I mean, when you were talking earlier about the software that went along with it for the lower thirds, and those kind of things that was 2009.
Yeah, it was a while ago. It may be a lot better now, but it was really a painful thing at the time. So, and our experience was, it worked great for several years as we got into different opportunities. Streaming has evolved, and so there's different formats and different things you can do. The iPhone was just getting to the point where you could stream to the iPhone, so you had to set up some special configuration to stream to the iPhone. Going back through the Wirecaster or through the Tricaster, it's a little tough. It's not that once you get it configured and you have volunteers to come in to use it and you can train them, but getting it configured is going to take a little more work to set up a special bit rate or a special format. We were at the time also streaming to another campus.
Right.
And so there was a couple of, so we had to go in and we were sending actually a Windows-based streaming format way back then to the other campus.
I remember that.
Yeah. So it's, this is geared for a church that's got a significant budget for doing the AV team, sort of things. Somebody's got upwards of $10,000 to $100,000 worth of budget to dedicate to this.
So I remember too, and of course, again, this is going back 2008, 2009, 2010. I remember to be able at one point to be able to stream to iOS devices, you had to have a specific format, and the Tricaster that our church had at the time didn't have that format. So we sent a stream to a computer sitting next to it that had a Flash Media Live encoder on it. And so we sent So basically the Tricaster, which, can stream online to wowza servers and all that stuff, we had to send a signal. It basically was a glorified switcher that went into this computer for flash. We had to set the flash format to H.264 and
the audio. Yeah, you're right. I completely forgot about that. I know we were porting it over, but I forgot the reason why, and that was through because when we wanted to stream to the iOS devices, the Tricaster we had purchased was not capable of doing it.
It was not capable of doing it back then. And we actually had some customers with streamingchurch.tv, which is one of our companies that we do streaming video for. And we had some customers, again, that had an older Tricaster and they had the same issue.
Right.
So we had to recommend, you need to send it over to a computer that has flash on it so that you can set up your H.264 and some AAC or whatever.
And some of the older Tricasters, the entry-level models only did Windows-based streaming.
Yeah, that's
which
right.
was, so you had to buy an upper-level model to be able to get the RTMP, the flash-based streaming, which is 98% of the streaming right now.
And now, of course, we're talking something here that was 5-6 years ago, roughly.
Yeah,
so we want to be careful we don't scare people off.
Yeah,
they've got all that done. But let me just bring this up, and that kind of comes down to it is, when you buy something that's hardware based like that, it goes obsolete. Sometimes, and I don't know if obsolete's the right word, but it goes somewhat outdated.
It ages like a computer ages at the
So
it's not dog years, but a computer years is what, probably 20 to 1 or so.
Yeah. It's so and this was exactly what happened. And again, it sounds like we're trashing Wirecast. Maybe I
Tricaster,
am. Yeah.
And
now I'm confused.
I'm with you too. I'm fighting. I've got a lot of cons I can talk about, but not a lot.
Yeah.
We have some pros. We should probably go through some of the pros.
So I'll wait to tell you what happened. Because I was in on the scene when the thing crashed and burned. But let's move on here.
Yeah. So this is an item where I've got some skilled AV people that have some experience, and I've got a good budget.
Okay.
And so we can briefly go through the one of the things we were talking about before we went on was Tricaster has a bunch of different models, and I took a snapshot. Right now I've listed 6 of the models, but I think they have a couple of variations of a couple of them. So there's, like 8 different models right now. Mm-hmm. And entry level Tricaster is something they call a Tricaster 40.
Okay.
And that can be had for around $5,000.
Okay. Not bad.
So yeah, and it's going to give you multiple audio and video inputs with multiple formats. As you get up into the more expensive Tricasters, they're going to have even more inputs and another variety of inputs, including SDI inputs.
Right. Okay.
So the Tricaster 40, I think it's got your standard composite inputs as well as I think an HDMI input on the lower end. So they've got a couple of models that I guess would be considered their entry level. Okay. And at the backing up a little bit, Tricaster is produced by a company called Newtek, Newtek. So newtek.com. So you can get a bunch of information there. They've got a handy little PDF document that will that asks you a bunch of questions to identify which is the right Tricaster for me. So if you're somebody with a good budget, has some trained, skilled, potentially full-time staff that does this sort of thing, then you're going to want to step through those things. So step through that recommendation tool. So let's just go real quick here. So the entry levels, they're $5K. They have what they call a Tricaster Mini, which is another desktop-mounted tool that is offered for around $10,000.
Okay.
One of the things that's interesting about the Tricaster is you get this thing booted up and running, and it's actually running on top of Windows. So there's a Windows interface. So when it boots, it goes through the normal Windows stuff, and then gets to the Tricaster interface, takes over. So you actually don't, unless you specifically switch out of the Tricaster interface and make it kind of challenging to get back to the Windows stuff. So it's really a computer with some really dedicated AV equipment in it, and it's running Windows and it's running the Tricaster software. The Tricaster software itself, as opposed to what we were doing with the lower thirds tool, is actually really good. So the software for it, is easy to use once you've been trained and you know what you're doing a little bit. And you can train a volunteer to use it. We did, we had only volunteers in.
I used it a few times.
Yeah, so you can walk them through and say, here's how you switch videos, here's how you do some other things, but it needs to be, set up by somebody else, I think.
Okay, all right.
So going over the models here. So we have the Tricaster 40 and the Mini, which are their entry-level boxes, which I think we probably had an equivalent of one of those too, just based on the price range.
Right.
And, their market, Newtek's market, it includes churches, but I think churches probably fall into this lower end.
Right.
I think their primary market is higher level broadcasting companies, not your network television level, but somebody
local TV stations.
Yeah, local TV.
Mobile, they want to go mobile. They want to go broadcast high school football games or basketball games, and maybe even, well, I don't know if college would fit into that category. Maybe depending if you have a small school. Maybe.
Yeah, or small production companies. I mean, there's I don't know if some of you may know Leo Laporte, who's has a bunch of video and audio podcasts. A pretty big setup, runs I think most of his stuff off a Tricaster, but again, he's got a $500,000 studio that he's running everything out of, so it fits in nicely. So let's just go through some of the models here. They have they have lower end models and then mid tier models, and then all the way up to their Tricaster 8000, which is a $60,000 box.
Yeah.
So if you
$60,000 for the Tricaster 8000.
Yes. Okay. You can't quite buy a Corvette for that now, but
you used to be able to.
You used to be able to buy a Corvette. So, and that's going to get you, as they move up in these price ranges, they're going to give you things like dual power supplies, so a bunch of fault tolerant things, so that while you're broadcasting,
fail-safe deals.
Yeah, fail-safe deals that if something was to fail, your broadcast will go on.
Yeah, kind of like a Starship. All these different fail-safe deals.
Yeah,
like the Enterprise or whatever.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So, and I think we've talked about some of this stuff. Is you're going to get a professional setup. You're going to have a lot of different choices and a lot of different video inputs that you can switch from. Okay. On the con side, this thing is expensive. That's one of the cons, and it's going to take someone that knows their way around the tool to get it set up. The configuring any special settings, you can get in to configure things, but some of the encoding presets, it'll have a set of maybe 40 different presets that are different bit rates and different resolutions that are preset into the Wirecast, at least the version we were using. And,
Tricaster.
Yeah. And Tricaster, yes. And the version we were using. But if what you need isn't on that list, you've got to go and configure your own, which kind of gets into the bowels of some of the back end setup of the tool in order to create So it's going to take a little bit of work and to get that set up.
Okay. So getting as we talk about the cons here a little bit as we wrap this up, would this be appropriate to tell my story of how we had a lightning strike?
Yeah, that's
the church.
Yeah, so it's one of the reasons that I think we lean towards the software-based products. One of the primary cons is this thing's expensive and it's all in one. And if something breaks, it has the potential to take your whole box down. So you can tell your story here.
Well, I know we in Arizona, Tucson, Arizona, which is where we're at here, we have this thing every year called monsoons, and everybody kind of looks forward to those things, but it does sometimes wreak some havoc as far as lightning strikes and those kind of things, and I've had that happen at our church several times, and we got hit probably a lightning strike, and we didn't really know because the lightning's going on all the time during monsoon, but I think we went to boot it up probably a Saturday evening to do our services, and the audio was messed up on it. I don't think we had any audio, if I remember right. You can correct me if I'm wrong here. But we kind of figured out that the module for the audio something had happened to it. It had fried or something, and we guessed that it was probably a lightning strike. So we managed to actually make it work. We ran something. I don't know if it was a different audio.
Yeah, do we bypass the audio? Because at the time we were using Flash Media Live encoder with the encoder, and we may have taken the audio directly into
what we did. I think we used something that it wasn't really designed for, because one thing Tricaster does have is these different components, and I don't know if we used something for head jacks or what it was, but we got it to work, and but we knew it wasn't the best thing to do. And again, my memory's fuzzy because this was a few years ago, but I do remember that part of my job back then was to oversee all that stuff, and I called Newtek to ask them what to do, and they said, well, your model is out of date. It's, they didn't say obsolete, but they said out of date. It was only like 3 years old, maybe at the time, maybe 2.5. I don't remember. So that kind of ticked me off a little bit. And then the other thing was, well, you have to send it back. And I said, okay, so what are we going to use? Can you give us a loaner? And they wouldn't give us a loaner because our model was out of date or something like that. And, if you work for Newtek and you're listening to this, feel free to give me some input on this, but it just was kind of frustrating. And we decided we actually lived with it. We actually kept it working by doing some kind of a workaround on it.
Yeah.
But it was going to be kind of a hassle. And we could send it back. I think we ended up having to send it maybe to El Paso, maybe.
I don't know if we ever were able to send it in because we needed it to do our video switching.
But there was a place we were going to send. I don't know if it was Nevada or somewhere like that. And of course, the big question mark was, what are we going to use? Are they going to be able to turn it around, get it back to us in time for the weekend? And it didn't look too good at the time. And so we end up kind of limping around, and we made it work. And I don't know what you guys. I think you guys kept using it.
We just kept using it until we replaced it with.
I moved on to another church, but now you guys are using something that's Wirecast based. But so it was. And again, I'm kind of slamming Tricaster here, but this is one of the things you're going to run into usually.
And had it been, it is a computer, but it's not your normal computer where you can say, oh, I'll just go pop a hard drive or put a new power supply in, or that are just really cheap and really easy to replace, or a new sound card or something.
Right.
And it was just not the case. This is a specialized piece of equipment that you've got to send off to their area to get it fixed.
And so software-based, which is, again, why we kind of push software-based products, is because
if your
computer goes, for churches.
Yeah.
If your computer crashes, you can always drag another computer in and make a couple quick changes, hopefully, and download the software in just a couple minutes. And
you're up and running.
Usually up and running. So that's kind of the downside to it. So as we kind of wrap this up, Steve, so really it's we're not saying Tricaster is not a good product. It's probably very good. All these different models you can choose from. It's very professional. And as Steve has said from the very beginning, if you have a dedicated staff that can work with that stuff and feels pretty comfortable around those kind of things, more power to you. You can certainly do a lot of quality stuff. They have virtual sets, although actually some software ones do too. There's bells and whistles that can really help.
If I was independent of the hardware question, I think the Wirecast has a better user interface and capabilities than the Tricaster user interface and capabilities. But it's not, your computer's not going to have a half a dozen SDI inputs that you'll get with the Tricaster.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, sounds good, Steve. I appreciate you, spending some time on this a little bit. And you actually drove a Tricaster. You were the main guy over there that was using it for quite a while. So you definitely had the expertise in it. So, so anyhow, when it comes to these live encoders, and there's other box encoders out there, and honestly, we could keep going on this subject, and we probably won't. But if you do have a different encoder, we were just talking about Blackmagic has a ATEM which when it first came out a couple of years ago, it's a great switcher and it's great for in-house kind of streaming. But at the time, it was not something that you could stream to Wowza servers with. Although one of our tech guys here, Eric, loved it as far as its capabilities for switching and all that, but it was not compatible with Wowza servers. Now, since then, we're kind of right before this podcast, we were talking about it, and we can't remember. You seem to think that the newer model does stream, or at least has an add-on.
I need to do a little
I think
quick research product. It's either a similar model or what. But
I think there's an add-on to it or something that you can get.
We'll have to find out.
But there are different encoders out there that are box hardware encoders. That's my whole point. That's what I'm trying to say here as we wrap up is there's lots of them out there, and we do have some customers using different ones. If you have questions about those, we can certainly dig up some information, either get some firsthand information from somebody that's using it, or do a little research ourselves. And just send us an email, support@streamingchurch.tv, and we certainly would be happy to help you. All right, so I think that just about wraps us up, Steve.
Sounds good.
The Christmas season is upon us, and if you're listening to these podcasts sometimes have life that go sometimes months and even years. But
we'll probably take next week off.
But we do want to wish our friends and our listeners a very Merry Christmas. And obviously a very Happy New Year. It's been just a great year for us, and we hope it's been a good year for you. And if we can help you with tech-related things or other church-related questions, we have been involved for a long time. You just send us an email, support@streamingchurch.tv. Subscribe to our podcast at iTunes. Look for Church Solutions Podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, which happens to be under my name, Phil Thompson Live, for YouTube, or take a look at our blog, newmediaministries.tv. And if we can certainly help you with any of your church-related things, we want to do that. We actually offer several products with JSL Solutions, don't we?
Yes, myflock.com, Church App Live, and streamingchurch.tv.
And myflock.com is actually a kind of a church management system that you can use, and it also provides you interactive websites. Churchapplive.com is, of course, mobile apps we offer. And all this stuff is very customizable, too, by the way. And, of course, the flagship product, well, I guess MyFlock's kind of the one that started 14 years ago, but streamingchurch.tv is something that's our streaming platform, and we provide streaming video. And again, that's very highly customizable. So a lot of stuff we offer is very interactive, but it's also easy to customize on your end.
Yep, exactly.
We can certainly help you too on that. So we are available. So guys, have yourselves a great Christmas and a great day for that matter. And Steve and I will catch you later for another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast. Take care.